Okay, so let's dive into the oil pipeline for a second, because this is about more than oil.
Oh, yeah.
So we actually talk a lot about uranium, and uranium is very important because uranium, there are only a handful of places where most of the world gets its uranium, and Niger is one of those places. But Niger's biggest export in terms of valuable mineral resources is actually gold.
That's correct.
And so that's why, the US, France, the UK, all of these countries that have historically been taking a lot of gold out of Niger, all of a sudden that becomes whose resource? So now instead of the West having the influence in Niger, what we have is we have Russia. We have, and through the Wagner Group, and we're going to dive into that in the next topic. But now we have the Western influence being kicked out of a country that is important for uranium, important for gold. And it's one of the countries that an oil pipeline was going through to supply Europe.
Yeah, that's the whole thing.
That's the thing. So right now, supplying Europe, we have these problems. We have Russia. So Nord Stream 2, we all know, was sabotaged. That cut oil and natural gas from Europe. One. There was another pipeline that was supposed to go from the United States to Europe to ease some of that problem. There were ecological issues with it. So that's now cut. Now we have a third pipeline that was supposed to supply Europe. And now that one is cut too, because it has to go through Niger, and Niger is active, and Algeria is actively blocking it.
Algeria refused.
So interestingly enough, with Algeria, because Algeria at first condemned this coup, right? Algeria at first, I think they said it was not acceptable. But Algeria, the chief of staff of the Algerian army, visited Moscow. I think it was like last week. I wonder if they're going to talk about the Niger coup.
Oh, I'm sure.
Of course they're going to talk about the Niger coup.
Because now the coordination. But most of the conversation, if I am to guess as an analyst, it won't be about Niger itself from a military standpoint of view, but rather from an economic.
Absolutely.
Remember, any military, any economic adventure, whatever that might be, this is how we've been operating. How do we back our economic investments, whatever, by the military? It would be the same argument. So. And also because he wants to make sure, because Algeria produces a lot of gas. So Russia will probably convince Algeria not to. And Algeria already did say, forget about giving Europe gas.
Absolutely.
Because Europe shot itself in the foot. We all know the failed policies. Of course, they've been giving money to Ukraine and so forth.
Right.
And I just came across, by the way, of I'm going to share a screen with you regarding of the spending. A video surfaced from the kids of the high-ranking officials in Ukraine, where they're sending their families to live. You know where they live? In southern France.
Yeah, in France.
You know how expensive southern France is? So,
and beautiful, by the way.
I'm going to share a screen here. Just briefly, there's not much, a lot to say. Just think of this one here, guys. Here it is. So this is the son of a famous Ukrainian.
I can't see anything yet.
It didn't come up.
Oh, there it is. There it is.
This is the son of a Ukrainian prosecutor fighting for Ukraine in Monaco. No, that's driving a Mercedes S series, whatever. A kid.
Yeah.
Let alone the idea of the defense minister in Ukraine.
Yeah.
Who bought a gift for his daughter's wedding.
Yeah, wasn't it a mansion?
$7 million. Where that money came from?
Us.
Another article that I read.
Did
you know the percentage of the sport vehicles in Ukraine shot up to the... We're talking about some exotic vehicles. You're in a war. What will vehicles be?
Well, so it's actually interesting. This is a little bit of a caveat from what's happening in Russia, but it's interesting to me that the amount of money that's been poured into Ukraine, that it's at a stalemate. So
that's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous because we're looking at hundreds of billions, if not $1 trillion at this point. And number one, Russia's economy is still growing. Okay. So Russia's economy did a dip last year. And now it's increased by 1.5%.
Yeah.
Russia found ways to sell its oil and natural gas that went around US sanctions.
Yeah.
And so now we're sitting here looking at a situation where all of this money has been poured into Ukraine for literally what?
Yeah. Let alone our beloved president just approved yesterday $200 million. And guess what?
It's
while,
like weekly.
while the island of Maui in Hawaii, did you know that it was no support from the military? We have one of the largest bases there. None. And when the president was asked about it, he said, you know what he said? And I put in quote, no comment.
Okay. That's really sketchy. In my opinion. That's very sketchy.
I know we can't talk too much about this on this platform.
We cannot.
And speaking of that, why don't you let our viewer know that what we're going to be tomorrow?
Guys, we got really tired of not being able to say a lot of the things that we really want to say. Honestly, it's very frustrating. But we love this channel and we want to keep this channel. So YouTube just doesn't allow us to say certain things. So we have a Rumble and we're going to start doing Wednesday live streams on Rumble every single Wednesday. Because we want to be able to talk openly and freely. That's just a fact. So if you guys want to hear some of the things, that's okay. Leave it. If you guys want to hear some of the things that we have not been able to say on this show, go check out our Rumble, type in geopolitics and conflict. It's the same. It's us, same us, but we're going to be able to talk a little bit more in depth. Because man, I don't know about you, David, but it actually really frustrates me a lot.
Well, if you only hear what I have to say. I used to work in Washington. I remember. So and also this is another reason why we're doing the course.
Yes.
What are we, by the way, on the course?
Okay, so the course, it's a U.S. government course. Why the U.S. government is the way it is, and really the answer to that is people do not understand the way the U.S. government works. We see the results, and most people are like, "How is this possible? How do Americans let this happen?" And the answer is that we don't really. And so you are primarily going to be teaching this course on the U.S. government. And it'll be out probably at the end of this month or the beginning of next month. So if you guys are interested in that course, let us know in the comments below.
And this is like the other course we had, the
No Nonsense Politics. Yeah.
Funny, still a lot of people.
Yeah, a lot of people. Well, because people, there's so much noise.
They want to cut through.
They want to cut through the noise. So that course, No Nonsense Politics, is basically for cutting through all the noise and figuring out what you actually need to be paying attention to. Because you don't need to be paying attention to all of it. There's certain things that you have to be paying attention to get the full picture of what's going on in the world.
Yeah, you guys be on the lookout for that. And also subscribe to our newsletter.
Yes.
Because it's very, very important. And also, if this is your first time on this channel, please subscribe. We really appreciate it. So.
Thank you.
And I'm very excited about Rumble. It's because I will be talking about some subjects that, of course, we can't talk on here. But and of course, I can share the classified. You know,
of course,
you guys know how it's the rule, is the law.
Yeah.
I observe the law. I respect the law. That's how it is. But there are other information I will be able to talk about. And, you know, you don't spend 14, 15 years in Washington without.
Right.
I was in the thick of it. So.
Right. Well, and honestly, I'm actually very excited to listen to you be able to speak freely. So Rumble, guys, check it out.
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow, same time, noon, on Rumble.
On Rumble.
Geopolitics and Conflict Show. Check it out.
Yeah. So to go back to our topic about the gas or the energy to Europe.
Yeah.
Europe, it's kind of too late now for it to play catch up.
Yeah.
Why? It's because they've gone so far now to the point of their economies are crumbling.
Absolutely.
One by one. You see now the disunity exists from within. Did you know that I have my family lives in France.
Yes.
And so I'm very familiar with what's going on in France, and they live in Paris.
Yeah.
You know, so it's closer to the Élysée.
Yeah.
The presidential palace and so forth. Did you know that a few months ago, the equivalency of our Joint Chief of Staff for us in the United States, their Joint Chief of Staff provided an analysis to President Emmanuel Macron. And they said to him, you better make a decision about what is about to happen in Niger.
Yeah.
You know what Macron did? He
What?
disregarded it. Why? Because his
Bad
focus
call.
was, his focus was on, oh, we gotta support Ukraine. We gotta do this.
Yeah.
We gotta do that.
Yeah.
You know, all of a sudden, exactly what those military officials warned him of. But this is not about that. This is about the question I'm going to ask you guys. What's taking place in Niger?
Yeah.
Is it about democracy or is it about sovereignty?
Right.
That is what's at the heart of it all.
Yeah.
And this is why now these young leaders, like I said earlier, the young generation of leaders are thinking differently.
Yeah.
They're realizing that Africa, with all its resources, and yet its people are not, their living standards have not improved.
Right.
So how come France will become number 4 in the world when it comes down to the gold reserve?
Right. Right.
And France has no gold mine in the country. Everything from access to uranium, because France is known in the world when it comes down to nuclear power plants, because they're using a lot for their electricity. Where all that's coming from?
Yeah.
And they thought that they could threaten Niger and all that, and Niger said, "Bring it on."
Yeah.
So this is where those dynamics, and when you add the Wagner to the mix, when you add North Korea to the mix, you can just see where it's going. So from an energy perspective, you're gonna expect to see major changes moving forward from an energy standpoint, because now countries are realizing, especially in Africa, we're just being used.
Right.
And for us in the United States, we did it for reason to push. Right. You know how much we made last year from energy?
Oh my God.
$211.8 billion. I just read it yesterday.
Yeah.
This is a net profit from gas.
Yeah.
You know, why? Because we want to sell gas to Europe 10 times the price.
Right. And I actually want to point out that exact thing that you just said.
Yeah.
So what happened after the Nord Stream pipeline, right? After that sabotage, Europe had to buy natural gas from the US at a higher price than it was paying the Russians.
We did it on purpose. We did it in purpose. We never wanted Europe to get closer to Russia economically, because if they do, it's a doom for us.
Right.
And this is exactly now what you're seeing taking place between China and Europe. Did you know that China just turned down $100 billion project, I think, with Germany? You know, same thing with, like I always say, and I'm going to repeat it again, not to beat the dead horse here, but nothing happens in geopolitics in a vacuum.
Absolutely.
Did you know why China turned down the sale of DJI, the drones to India?
Yeah.
Because India was about to turn around and share the technology with the US.
Yeah.
So DJI said, "Oop, we're done. We're not selling."
Yeah.
So that is so why am I bringing this up? Just to highlight the big picture. Europeans found themselves now in a precarious,
very much so,
situation, especially when it comes down to energy.
Very much so.
I don't see that pipeline moving forward.
Right now, it's halted.
Yeah.
Right now, it's
completely
see that's halted.
Moving forward, because now, and if they think they could threaten now Niger because ECOWAS, the economic community of Western African nations.
Yeah.
They threatened military. Now they're backing down from that.
Yeah.
Because you get members of the ECOWAS. I have a logo of it here just to share it with our viewers so they know. So the ECOWAS itself is kind of like backing down, saying, you know what, we can't do that, because now they realize even some countries inside the ECOWAS itself.
Yeah.
They're saying, no, we're not going to do it.
And especially the Nigerian Senate rejected military intervention.
Yeah.
And Nigeria has the largest border. And so it's very unlikely, don't you think, that anything will happen if Nigeria isn't on board?
That's true. But also Nigeria is the weak link in the ECOWAS.
Yeah.
It's
that's
because
interesting.
Remember, the Western influence still has always existed within those countries. Nigeria is an OPEC member, remember, but also It's the influence that the Western hegemon or the Western powers had on those countries. And this is why you see in the division from within ECOWAS. Because if you think about the members, I'm going to just briefly here say the countries you get: Benin, Burkina Faso, Cabo Verde, La Côte d'Ivoire or Ivory Coast. I spent time there, by the way. The Gambia, Ghana, Guinea, Guinea-Bissau, Liberia, Mali, Niger, Nigeria, Senegal, Sierra Leone, and Togo. So that is to highlight to you, the division exists within them now, and not be backing down.
Yeah.
Because that is what the Western powers will hope for. So they push in the ECOWAS to do.
Right.
And ECOWAS kind of like, we're going to have to think twice about that one. Because here is the thing. As geopolitical analysts, I guarantee you this, guys. Should a war erupt there, it will destabilize.
Hugely.
Major. And we're talking about major disruption to the economic outlook on global stage.
I absolutely agree.
There's a lot of resources that comes out of Africa.
Absolutely.
That supplies the world. So,
and right now what we're looking at, so I want to bring up a couple of things that you're sort of talking about with the destabilization. So one of them is that, there were initial reports. So let me see if I can find exactly who was reporting this. But the military government reportedly halted uranium and gold exports to France. But Reuters later reported that they didn't halt exports of uranium and gold. So there's multiple stories, right, about whether they halted the exports of uranium and gold to France. But it seems like they didn't, but they could. And so I want to point out that they may not have actually shut everything down. There seems to be, in my opinion, and I would love to hear your opinion, that there is a little bit more strategy going on here than maybe we are looking at.
Yeah, but it's easy for them now to replace if France threatened with military,
right?
But the Niger, in this case, or even Burkina Faso, move forward with that decision of not.
Right.
I think for the Burkina Faso, I did check the story, and it's confirmed that they halted the export of uranium to France. But guess what? With North Korea now, they have another client.
Right.
Just replace.
Right. And they have China as a client, and they have.
Well, China didn't get in yet. Fully.
Yes, not fully. So they are very heavily in Algeria, though.
Because Algeria is the largest.
Yes, Algeria is.
And Algeria has a lot of oil.
They do. And that's part of why this pipeline issue is a really big problem. So the countries that the pipeline are supposed to go through is Algeria, Nigeria, and Niger.
Yeah.
And so this pipeline was supposed to supply Europe with 120 BCM of gas per year. So I'm very interested to see, because I think you're right. I think it's probably halted. But we're looking at a mass restructuring of who owns and controls the resources coming out of Africa right now.
Well, that's why Africans now waking up.
Yeah.
And it's about time. As I mentioned earlier, I went to Ivory Coast.
Yeah.
I went to Djibouti. And I speak French. They speak French in those two countries. And I used to go outside and walk. I mean, they know I'm a foreigner, I'm white and all that. Wonderful people, by the way.
Yeah.
So, but the poverty level, where
oh my God.
And I always asked myself, wow, a country that is rich in natural resources and not benefiting from it.
Right.
Of course, the infrastructure is not there, but well, if those countries that colonized, which mainly France, I wish I could find the map, but so what France was saying, which I found it very, very ludicrous, because here is the thing. I'm going to share this screen with you guys just to see, because you need to understand all this here. Look at this one here, and I'm going to read it to you. Can you see it? Is it?
Yes,
there? Yeah.
it is up.
What it says is, this is Macron saying, and I quote, "The great risk Europe faces in getting caught up in crises that are not ours." End of quote. French president. Why am I saying all this? Because this guy, this is Bazoum, the so-called democratically elected. Well, he was democratically elected.
Right.
Let's be fair. But the outcry that the West is doing, because Nolan, when she was there, she was kicked out by the General Abdurrahman Tiani. He kicked her out of the country.
He did.
Because she said, well, you need to restore. Oh, well, wait a minute. If we want to restore the democratically elected here, how come you didn't restore the one in Ukraine in 2014?
Right.
That's a double standard.
Yep.
You can't be operating on a global stage, maintaining that. Second thing, this guy here, guess who he called on for reinstating him as democratically elected?
Mm-hmm.
He called on the US and France.
Yep.
Not the Nigerian people.
Right.
And this is what was troubling for them to, for the French president to be saying just stuff like this. Well, we're gonna, no. That era is gone.
Right. It really is gone. And I want to point out, we talk about this, that who is really putting the infrastructure investment into Africa. So although this is Algeria, China's Belt and Road Initiative is actually very, very strong in Africa. China is developing Algeria's, I'm going to pronounce this wrong, El Hamdania Central Port, which is Algeria's largest and first deep water port. That's a really big deal for Algeria.
Because it's the access to the Mediterranean also.
It absolutely is. It's the access to in and out goods that's
true.
Really, and especially natural resources, that is going to really, really boost Algeria's economy. And so you're looking at when China comes in, and they also helped complete 750-mile east-west highway connecting Algeria to Morocco and Tunisia. And about 1,000 Chinese companies operate in Algeria. So although this is Algeria, and we're talking a little bit about Niger, China's investment in these countries has started to get very substantial. And so and their economy is growing as a result. And I think that that's very important to be paying attention to. And when you're looking at the West, that more or less, no matter whether, I don't think colonialization was acceptable no matter what.
No.
What happened was absolutely horrific and absolutely not acceptable no matter what. But if you're also looking at who has destroyed the countries or not allowed them to grow, not allowed their infrastructure to grow, versus who is building them up and who is allowing their infrastructure to grow. If you're people in those countries, which are you going to choose? And I'm not saying China's doing it out of the goodness of their heart. I don't think they are. I think they're looking at
it's a business transaction.
The business. They're looking at
economics,
the natural resources. They're looking at the fact that a lot of in many African countries, those are some of the only places where population is actually growing. We have a huge population deficit here in the United States. The birth rate is declining. The population, the only reason the population is growing is because of immigration. And it's this China also has a huge problem with this, where they have a much larger aging population than they do have a younger population.
Yeah.
And so you're looking at one of the only places in the world where the population is actually growing. And so what are you going to do? If your primary concern is business development, where are you going to go?
You're going to think in terms of where the resources are.
And that's including human resources.
It's expected because Africa has the what do you call it? The human capital.
They do. They have the human capital. And so everything is economics. And people talk about, oh, well, it's the spread of democracy or the democratically elected, whatever. It's never about that. It's always about resources. It's always about economics. And so if you look at the economics of any given situation, that's where you find your answers.
And this is where, just to tie it back to the energy part, this is where Europe now finding itself really sort of out of luck.
Yeah.
Even Qatar, which had a good relationship with, they turned down the request from the EU and went ahead with China for 27-year contract. I found the map that I wanted to share with you guys.
Let's see it.
I'm going to share it here because you need to see this. What you're looking at is the map of former French colonies. And I'm not going to go through all this, just to highlight to you that the last country that was gained independence was in 1977.
Yeah.
So
That's recent.
So
Well,
when you look at
not as
this
recent.
map,
Yeah.
okay, and you look where the Sahel region is, and what did I say? The Sahel region stretches from the western, from the almost the Atlantic Ocean all the way to the Red Sea.
Yeah.
This is what French have occupied all this, and this area that you are looking at is rich in natural resources.
Yep.
So I just wanted to share that with you. Guys, so you'll see,
and I want to bring up actually a sort of as you have that map up,
I'll put it back.
that look at, so I hear this actually a decent amount where people say, oh, there's no way the US is going to lose its hegemony. And if you look at this, the France used to be a giant imperial global power.
Big.
Okay. Like look at how much of Africa it had. And now look at where it's at.
Kicked out.
Kicked out.
So
and kicked out of every part of this. And so we're looking at throughout history, you have to pay attention to what happened to the other countries that are in the same position the United States is in right now.
Yeah. Well, the best one I can now compare to is of course, what the British Empire did.
Yeah.
Especially in Southeast Asia.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
It's what we are doing now in Southeast Asia.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes down to the in Philippines, when it comes down, of course, South Korea area, but also in the areas of the South China Sea. What are we doing? So Australia, of course, that's a given.
Hugely.
Australia turns out, the prime minister turns out to be very. That's another conversation for another day. So